Hey, everybody. Welcome to FL Teams Live. We've got your NFL Power Ranking show for you after week 11 in the National Football League. And on behalf of Jeremiah Hensley, myself, and all of the FL Teams family, let us be the first to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. Or probably not the first, but I heard that like 2 weeks ago. So we're probably not first. But hey, happy Thanksgiving anyways. Let's talk about our newest partner. They're revolutionizing the world of sports betting and fan engagement by making sports fandom profitable. That company is Symbol, the stock market for sports. Download the Symbol app. That's SIMBULL, and use the promo code FL Teams, which is coming right there underneath me, FL Teams, and you receive a free team stock valued up to $150 upon signing up. Again, download the Symbol app and use the promo code FL Teams. Well, Jeremiah, the three Florida teams had a bye week, so we don't have. Interesting that they were all the same week, but we don't have them to talk about as much. But let's just roll in from the bottom half of the power rankings.
The bottom half will give us something to talk about with Florida, because I'm pretty sure number 32 is playing my Dolphins this year.
They sure are. The Dolphins get back-to-back bye weeks because this week they play our unanimously 32, the Houston Texans. The Russell Wilson-led Broncos, number 31. You probably could have won a lot of money betting that they'd be that low on any power rankings this season. Wow. Here they are. Above them is one of the two teams that have already fired their head coach. The Carolina Panthers come in at number 30. The Jacksonville Jaguars remain at number 29 in their bye week. The Las Vegas Raiders get their win over the Broncos, 2 of their 3 wins against the Broncos. They move up to number 28. The Pittsburgh Steelers, tough game against Cincinnati. They at 27. The Cleveland Browns come in at number 26. They play the Bucs this week. Number 25, the Chicago Bears. Number 24, the limping to the finish line Los Angeles Rams. We had a 3-way tie for number 21, but through a complicated tie-breaking process. Number 23, the Indianapolis Colts. Number 22, the Arizona Cardinals. Number 21, the New Orleans Saints. Number 20, the Detroit Lions, coming off their 3rd straight win. Number 19, the Atlanta Falcons. Number 18, the Green Bay Packers. And rounding out the bottom half, number 17, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Dropped a couple spots in their bye week, actually. So not much to talk about with the Bucs and Jags. I mean, the Jags, we know what they are. It is what it is. The Texans are clearly, I think, I'm sure you saw the news that Kyle Allen is going to get the start against the Dolphins. They're benching Davis Mills. They are making sure they get that number 1 pick to pick a quarterback. They've got a 2-win advantage or disadvantage, depending on how you look at it. So they got a pretty good shot at wrapping this number 1 pick up and getting. Obviously, they're going for a quarterback, which I will say this as a team who's as a fan of a team who could use a quarterback, a little intrigued by Davis Mills. You got to think he might be available in the offseason, but all that being said, any thoughts? We'll talk about the Texans-Dolphins game. It should be, like I said, kind of an easy stretch here for the Dolphins. The Browns, a bye week, and the Texans.
We need that, and hopefully, the defense needs to stay right too, right? And I think that's one of the biggest things that we need to pull out of this. I think it's interesting. These teams down near the bottom, this is getting to that time of the year where if you're out of it record-wise, it starts getting interesting personnel-wise, right? Kyle Allen coming in now for Davis Mills. Really, I guess to see what you got sort of deal. right? And then looks like Carolina is going to go to their third starting quarterback. Sam Darnold's going to be starting on Sunday. So from PJ Walker to Baker Mayfield to Sam Darnold, like all these guys down near the bottom now are starting to shuffle some things in and see what they can come up with. So, I've spent many years as a Dolphins fan in this lower half around week 11. So I start looking for things to get excited about. You start looking at other stuff. What the Jags picked up Darrell Henderson this week, who at one point in time, had some history as a bruising back for the Rams. So it'll be interesting now to see these teams on the lower end, what they're starting to do. You mentioned it, though, the Rams down on the bottom, it goes from bad to worse. Matt Stafford's going to be out. Boy, I bet Beckham is really happy he didn't sign there prior to the season.
The Rams might be in the worst. I don't know how else to say it. The worst spot of any franchise looking forward. They won a Super Bowl, so you can say it was worth it. I would say it was worth it. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of picks coming up in the near future. A lot of Jalen Ramsey got cooked a few times this weekend, and it's not the first game. He's on the wrong side of the mountain as a cornerback. He's on the decline. The one person I kept thinking is, poor Aaron Donald was this close to retiring. He's probably like, I could have gone out on top. Instead, I'm going to go out on a last place team.
Yeah,
that might end up having the worst season of any Super Bowl champion of all time. I'd be a little pissed off if I was Mr. Donald. But it's he's getting paid well. So.
Yeah, and you know what? He'll ride off into it. It was worth a shot. I mean, nobody would have thought this team would have been where they're at right now, right? I mean, again, before the season, just like the Broncos, you'd have never pegged them to be down this low. With the Broncos as well, how about Melvin Gordon? Cutting Melvin Gordon. I mean, I get it. The guy was fumbling the ball, but geez.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another sign of giving up on the season. I mean, you're going forward with Latavius Murray and
Marlon Mack. Hey, I think Marlon Mack's an upgrade over Melvin Gordon, sir.
Well, yeah, he could be. Marlon Mack, prior to the Jonathan Taylor emergence, he was going to be the dude. It mentioned in the John Taylor, I'll tell you, on the bottom end of this, very interesting again, though. I think Indy has turned a corner. I watched most of that Eagles game because, again, I'm outside of Philly. So I watched that, and they played really well. I mean, they were in that game. They had every opportunity to win that game. Indy really, really kept it tight. I think they're starting to come back into form of the team that we thought they were going to be. I mean, hell, Matt Ryan didn't even look bad. It was pretty interesting to see.
Should have drawn the face mask penalty that probably would have sealed the game for the Colts too.
Yeah. So you mentioned 3 in a row. How about, look, I'm looking at the slate of games for tomorrow. This might actually be a pretty entertaining football Thanksgiving for the first time in a long time.
Best one I can remember, probably. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. We'll touch on that later. There's a lot of teams in the top half of the rankings playing tomorrow. Actually, the Lions, I think, are the only one not in the top half of the rankings that are playing tomorrow. And hey, they're an intriguing team. By the way, I did predict on this show last week that the Lions would defeat the Giants.
You called it.
Yeah, I was 13-1 in my picks last week.
Well, looking at that, let's look at that top half, man. What do we got rolling through?
All right. The very disappointing Los Angeles Chargers come in at number 16. The New York Jets. I knew that was going to happen on that punt return. They're at number 15. The Washington Commanders quietly sneaking up the rankings up to number 14. The Seattle Seahawks come in at number 13. The New England Patriots jump up, but only to number 12. The Cincinnati Bengals were actually unanimous across the board at number 11 on every ballot. Wow. Number 10, the San Francisco 49ers. For some reason, beating the Cardinals is impressive to a lot of people. I don't know. Number 9, the New York Giants, who lost to the Lions. Number 8, interestingly enough, also unanimous across all the ballots, the Tennessee Titans. Number 7, interestingly enough, also unanimous across all the ballots, the Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens. There's a clear line there where 7 and 8 were unanimous, and 1 through 6 were all jumbled up on each ballot. But there's a clear mark where there's 7 and 8, and then there's the top 6.
Yeah.
That's interesting how this worked out. Coming in at number 6, the Minnesota Vikings. At number 5, the team that just beat the Minnesota Vikings, the Dallas Cowboys. Number 4, the idol Miami Dolphins. Number 3, the Buffalo Bills. Number 2, the Philadelphia Eagles. And number 1, the Kansas City Chiefs. Hop to the top spot in the rankings. I guess, we've kind of already talked about the Dolphins. Let's touch on the Bills were a team that they struggled out of the gate against Cleveland. They've had a tough schedule recently, and I was really curious. And I said, I'm like, they need to win a close game. They beat the Chiefs in a close game, but they need to win a close game to get the taste out of their mouth after 2 close losses. It wasn't really a close game in the end. The Browns scored late to make it look closer than it really was. The game wasn't really in jeopardy. But I do think going through a little adversity in the beginning of the game, I think that's one of those wins that championship teams do get. It's just, we got to grind this out. We're the better team. Don't worry about the early results. Just keep doing the thing that we know we could do and win this game. Also, They had to move their game from Buffalo to Detroit, where they play again tomorrow. I think I heard they were traveling back to Buffalo. I'm like, why? I don't know if they ended up doing that, but it's like, it seems like you should obviously you're going to get moved to the visitors' locker room, but I mean, just
stay.
Chill. Just stay in Detroit.
You want to go home to 6 feet of snow?
Detroit's not the greatest place in the world to hang out, but I mean, it's not. We're talking about Buffalo. It's not. So I thought an impressive win from the Bills. The biggest game, obviously, in this matchup, though, the Cowboys just dismantled the Vikings, who were our number 1 team last week. Not a good look for Minnesota. Anything in the top half of these rankings that kind of pop out to you?
Buffalo to me is a little concerning. Just in the sense that I don't know what it is about Buffalo, but they're not firing on all cylinders. It's not the same team as they were before. Dallas, after putting up the way that they did against Minnesota, that team is crazy talented. Tony Pollard adds a whole nother dimension to that offense that just wasn't there with just Zeke, right? With just Elliott, Pollard can pop at any time, catching the ball, running the ball. Dak's getting back into the swing of stuff. Their defense, of course, is, if you can't neutralize Micah Parsons, you're going to have a long day. And that's not an easy thing to do. No. So Dallas on all areas is interesting. They've hung around in the middle of this pack. But as we're getting closer toward the end of the season, there are teams that are starting to look like they're taking steps, that are getting better. Minnesota, man, they just seem like it seems like the story of Minnesota my entire football fandom life. Okay. All the way back to the days of Randall Cunningham, that Minnesota just can't be sustainably good. Like they have that moment, but it's always a letdown. There's always a letdown with Minnesota. I just feel like that always happens. But I didn't expect that. I mean, they got rocked. And that was ugly. So, it's interesting. I think you are seeing the top 5 or 6 teams rise to the cream, right? I mean, you are seeing that, and you've got a little bit on the outskirts. So those top 8 teams that we have, I think are all very viable at this point. I mean, if any one of those teams ends up winning a Super Bowl, I don't think anybody's surprised by that. Hell, I'd maybe even say top 9. Right.
I think looking at the voting, and there's kind of after 8, there's kind of a 9 to 12, maybe 13. There were some differing opinions on I had the Patriots number 9. I had them the highest of any voter. You know what? We'll talk about the Patriots because let's segue this. Look at this guy with
Yeah.
the segues into looking ahead to Week 12. Look, we always do the biggest risers and fallers. Frankly, and if you have any different, well, we could talk about that too. But all 3 games I wrote down are happening tomorrow.
Yep.
Like these are
Yep.
some interesting games on Thanksgiving Day. A lot of it, frankly, due to Detroit being interesting, which they're usually not on Thanksgiving Day, frankly. But look, Detroit's hot. Josh Allen's a little hindered. The early game, Buffalo at Detroit, they're going to have some energy going there in Detroit. That's look, I'm not doing what I did last week. I'm not predicting the Lions to win the game. I would not be shocked if the Lions win. I won't even penalize the Bills that much next week on my ballot if they lose a close game to Detroit. Detroit's definitely going to be jumping up quite a bit if they win. Any thoughts? I mean, that game went from looking like it was going to be terrible a few weeks ago to being really, this is an exciting one.
I think it's really going to be a great game. I mean, I'll take Detroit plus 9.5 all day, every day. I think this is probably as excited as Detroit has been about football in a long time. They started off the season really well. They started struggling going into their bye. They come off with 3 wins. And they were in that Dolphins game. I mean, there's no reason in the world they could have beat the Dolphins. I mean, that could have been 4. They were right there with them. They play hard. Aiden Hutchinson is all of a sudden starting to look like that guy that they thought he was going to be. I mean, just made some unbelievable plays last week, a difference maker on the defense. I do think Allen's a little banged up. I think Detroit's got a legitimate chance to win that game. So that's going to be great. The Giants and Cowboys, I think that's going to be a telltale too, right? Because you're sitting at the same record, but how they've gotten there is vastly different.
They're pointing different directions, especially after last week.
Yep. The Giants have been overachieving, right? And some would say that Dallas, even at 7-3, have been underachieving with what they were doing early in the season. They didn't have Dak. They didn't have all the other stuff. So this is going to be, to me, it's kind of a nice litmus test of who's real. Like what's that going to turn out to be? And then again, the Patriots, who knows with that? I mean, the Patriots, they beat up my boy Zach Wilson enough to put him on the bench. So, in 2 games against the Patriots, Belichick has just owned him. But 6-4 for the Patriots too. They're quietly doing it. I mean, if you ask on offense, who are their top producers? I mean, their defense is playing unbelievable. But on offense, who scares you on that offense? Ramondre Stevenson's okay. I mean, you've got the 2 tight ends, Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. But, I mean, really, right? I mean,
they're a defensive team. So it's kind of there's a resurgence of that. Even looking at the Giants Cowboys matchup, I'm sitting here thinking, I remember watching their first matchup on Monday Night Football and thinking, these offenses they're grinded out offenses. They are not pretty. They're, they've got some talent at least on offense, which I don't think the Patriots have. But there is a resurgence of the old school. We're going to play defense and run the football type teams. And it's, look, the Giants, it's working. The Cowboys, it's working. The Patriots, it's working well enough. They're 6-4. I mean, it's okay. And I think they've got a great chance of beating the Vikings.
I think the Vikings have to. This is a statement game for Minnesota, legit, right? I mean, you could make the argument that they lost their first game was to Philadelphia. The big emotional win, the way that they beat Buffalo the week before. You come in to play a good team. Dallas is not a pushover. And, you could make the argument for that emotional letdown of the hangover game. But the Patriots are not going to come easy either. And they're a defensive team, like we were saying. And the way that the blueprint to success against Minnesota, pressure Cousins, make Cousins make decisions. And if New England can do that, then they're absolutely right back in it. But think about this, man. This is the same Patriots team that got smacked around by the Bears not like 2-3 weeks ago. Like, this NFL season is just
Yeah, that game, I do think I was thinking about that when I was ranking the teams. It's like, I guess you got to give them a mulligan on that one. They had a mini little quarterback controversy that kind of went away after Zappi had a real bad second half against Chicago.
Yeah.
And I wonder if maybe that was weighing over the team. The first 3 and out or whatever, the fans were booing and Mac Jones, which, boy, the New England fans looking dumb. I mean, it's like you're booing your second year quarterback for this guy who looks pretty good in a couple games. Pump the brakes, folks. That can do bad things with your.
Yeah, we're going to see that with the Jets, right? Jets are going to roll out Mike White.
Boy, the Jets, they seem like they might be a quarterback away from being a real good team. I don't think. Look, Mike White started his college career at USF. I remember watching his first start and thinking, this guy is going to be the next, Dan Marino. Now, turns out he really needs a clean pocket or he is not good. By not good, I mean not good. So I don't think he's the answer quarterback. I think he's a fine backup in the league. I don't think he's the guy who's going to take them over the top. But the Jets are doing so well. I mean, they're not going to be drafting in position to maybe pick a top quarterback this year. So maybe they're a team that a guy like Jimmy G this offseason can, maybe he's enough to take them over the top.
I think you got to look at, you can't trust your front office anymore with the Jets. I mean, you did this with Darnold, right? You swing and miss with Darnold. Right. Now you move him out to bring in Zach Wilson. If you miss on this one too, you don't get many chances to miss on top 5 quarterbacks, top 10 quarterbacks. Right. I mean, you can't, that just cripples a franchise.
Well, it's the position that's most busted, in the draft. It's first round quarterbacks. They're more likely to bust than not. It's one of those things where it's like, because people reach for Kenny Pickett. I don't know if he's going to be good or not. That's way beyond. He has the skill set to at least be an adequate quarterback, I think. But you're desperate to pick that quarterback. That's why, going back to this year's draft, I'm like, oh, these guys who slipped to the 3rd, 4th round that we thought might be borderline first round picks, they're probably not going to ever be good players in the NFL, or they would have been.
Yeah, it's and I love, like, right now, I like the role of the Dolphins having the bye. I was kind of hoping for some better news coming out of the bye, quite honestly. I'm worried about Jason Sanders. The special teams have been a problem with Miami. From everything I hear, there's no kicker competition. There's no nothing. It's Sanders. Hopefully the defense got some more time together with Bradley Chubb and figuring this out. We need this game against Houston right now. Because outside of that, I mean, the next games behind that, depending on what the rest of your season, we're going to San Francisco, to San Diego, to LA, and then to Buffalo. I'm going to know a lot more about the Dolphins come around Christmas time, right? By the time we get to that Christmas Day game where the Packers are coming into Miami, we're going to know. I mean, this is home game, and then you got a 3-game stretch on the road against the Chargers, the Niners, and the Bills.
And the Chargers, they're an interesting team because the voter that had them the highest was the smartest of the voters. Recently turned 10 years old. He's like, the Chargers barely lost like a buzzer beater to the Chiefs, who are the number 1 team in the rankings. And you're saying they're trash? I'm like, they always lose close games. But you're right. I think I had them the lowest in my rank. I had them down at 17.
And they just got healthy.
Like
I mean, they've been playing without their wide receivers for a period, right? I mean, you had no Mike Williams. You had, Justin Herbert hasn't had pass catchers out there that are, staying on the field.
No, they got, I think it was Keenan Allen did finally come back. And they put up a fight against the Chiefs. They were this close to winning that game. But I think it's kind of just become that's the Chargers. They're capable of being a championship team. They can't win close games.
I think it's funny because always for Dolphins fans, especially, that argument's always going to be the Tua Herbert, Tua Herbert. And when I saw Herbert, I said, and I think it's probably truer than I even thought, where I said, Justin Herbert's like the next Dan Marino. Well, he might actually be, in the sense that he's going to put up numbers, right? But you're right. They don't win close games. Like, they don't win those shootouts. They don't win the come from behind. So it's, how serious can you take the Chargers? But you're going to be in for a game, right? You're going to be in for a game when you go to play them. I felt like, really, man, from this week, and it's jumping over across the board a little bit, that Raiders-Broncos game, like, that was just football emotion at its best, because you were literally looking at two teams that whoever lost that game, I mean, their season's probably already over on both sides, but the loser of that game was like, you're done. Just mail it in. It's finished. And to have that loss happen to you the way that it did, if you're Denver, that was a crusher, man. I was happy for Derek Carr. I got a soft spot for Derek Carr. I think the guy cares. I think he's a good leader. It was good to see him and Devontae Adams hook up. But yeah, I mean, this whole Denver's done. I mean, that's just a done season now. And probably again for Las Vegas, it's the same, because the AFC is going to you can't be those middle of the pack teams and expect to have a chance in the AFC right now. It's like the playoff picture in the AFC is almost locked in. I mean, almost.
Yeah, it's not. The NFC has kind of a weird. I mean, they're definitely separation, because look, the Vikings, we were talking about them. They can lose. They're 4 games up in their division still. Like, right. I mean, they don't have anything to worry about. They can limp in, but they're going to be in the playoffs. The Eagles are going to be in the playoffs. Giants, Cowboys, I would say the winner of the game would have to have an epic collapse not to get into the playoffs.
Right.
The 49ers and or the Seahawks, maybe both at this point, are going to get in. And then whoever wins the NFC South, which is looking more and more likely for the Bucs. But somebody pointed out from a Saints podcast, like, look, the Saints are going to lose to the 49ers. They're playing their 17th offensive lineman against the 49ers defense. They're going to lose that game on Sunday, but they beat the Bucs. They go into their bye week finally. Maybe they get some players back. They're going to be 1 game out of first place going into their bye week. It's 5-8.
Yeah,
it's like that's how bad this division is. So
outside of the AFC South, I mean, there's not a lot of hope in this. And Tennessee's looking like they're taking the stranglehold on the AFC South too.
Yeah, the Colts had a chance with a win, but I think they're too far back at this point.
No, you really are. And I mean, and then who knows what's going to happen in the AFC East, how that's going to shake out, and how that's going to play into Cincinnati. But I mean, you're looking there, you got the Chargers at 5-5. And then you got the Bengals 6-4, and then New England, the Jets, right? And then Dolphins and Bills are 7-3. So I mean, you've got a lot of wide open there. The Bengals
at least 3 are going to get in, I think.
Yeah, because unless the Chargers make some sort of miraculous run on what they do, but I think it's really going to probably be Miami, Buffalo, New England, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Tennessee, KC.
I had 1 team in the AFC West, which was another division. We thought going into the year, if you said 4 teams in a division were going to possibly be in the playoffs, we would have all said immediately the AFC West, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, look at the Lions. If the Lions win that game 5-6, they are still in a wild card hunt.
Very much so, yeah.
Right? I mean, so that's going to be a very interesting game tomorrow. It's a heck of a way to kick off a Thanksgiving, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, they did show. I did see they were showing the NFC playoff race. They still have the Packers in there at 4-7. Rounding out, they had the Cardinals, Packers, and Saints at 4-7. I'm like, I don't think they'd be on the AFC's picture. I mean, unless you really want to give false hope to people, but I think you're going to need 11 wins to get in the AFC.
It looks that way. And, so I think, like I say, I'm really happy the Dolphins got the Texans. But if Miami's taught me anything this year, it's not to look past anybody. we've made games out of less, right? I mean, Chicago, Detroit, those teams taking us to the wire with stuff. But it'd be real nice to put one away on Houston.
I don't know if either of those are less than the Texans.
Well, I would hope not, right? So hopefully, and then because again, that 3-game stretch is going to be a tough one coming up behind it. So yeah, and Buffalo's going to be interesting because
Yep, I'm not sure if we lost Jeremiah here. So I'll take it home because he is frozen up. Buffalo's going to be interesting though. So that's what he was saying. Anywho, to wrap things up, hey, make sure you're subscribed to FL Teams. There he is, starting to come back.
Finally, I locked up there a second. But yeah, man. Hey, happy Turkey Day! Happy Turkey Day, man. It's gonna be a lot of good football and fun. And I think, of course, we speak for everybody, man. We're really thankful to have this platform with FL Teams. Got a lot of exciting new stuff coming down the pipeline too. So the second half of this season is gonna be a lot of fun. We appreciate you guys being with us and sticking through it.
Amen. All right, everyone. Make sure you subscribe to FL Teams. We will see you here next week. Peace.